Thanks so much, everybody, for being with me here today. Sorry about that. I'm going to jump straight into it. As mentioned by your host today, Leverton is the only AI-powered machine and deep learning document and data abstraction software out on the market that has high performance in terms of automation capabilities. I'm going to show you a quick presentation, and then we'll go right into the demo. All right. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, looks great.
Great. Okay. So let's go through it. So who are we? First of all, we are a global company based in Berlin, London, New York, and Dallas with about 80 people globally. We've been around since 2012. We were founded by a group of scientists who were basically working at the German Center for Artificial Intelligence, applying machine and deep learning algorithms to document and data abstraction out of OCR'd images. We now have over 100 plus clients globally with over 250,000 documents under management. And we integrate with some of the leading document management systems and ERP systems. So at its core, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what we do, although there's a tremendous amount of complexity behind our application. You simply upload the documentation into our platform, just like you would in, let's say, a Dropbox, Box, Google Drive type of situation. You could also potentially utilize our APIs to connect directly to your document management system to automatically upload real estate documentation, such as real estate leases. We then apply our proprietary optical character recognition technology onto your PDFs, and then we begin our AI transformation. For every project that we engage in, we set up a unique and accurate data model that looks for the information that you're looking to pull out of these documents. In the case of real estate leases, it would be some pretty straightforward items like rent, start dates, end dates, some options, termination rights, audit, subleasing clauses, and assignment clauses, etc. And then for some of you, there may be more nuanced intricacies of information that you want to pull out. So if you're buying a retail asset, for example, you may want to pull out things like co-tenancy clauses or other types of information. Then you go to a review process, which is basically the review of the information that the AI has pulled out. The AI is good, but it can't do everything on its own. There are some complexities that it won't be able to pull out. And so this is where you as the human reviewer can go through and validate the information or have us do this for you. Finally, the data is completely structured and it is exported to a platform in which you can access, analyze the structured data, or you can send it out to other applications such as a reporting application, printing out a customized lease abstract template, exporting out a calendar of due dates and times, as well as pushing this out to a map. We have an open API with JSON RESTN, so you can always access all the information from the SQL database at any time and have it directly sync or connect to your ERP or lease administration system of choice. So why is this useful and why is this important? Traditionally, things in the real estate industry have been done quite manually, such as lease abstraction, document review, key search terms, putting information into structured formats into Yardi or MRI or other lease administration systems. And this has not really changed for probably the past 20 or 30 years. You either outsource this work to an offshore team or to your brokerage services company, or you have an in-house team of personnel that are doing these lease administrative services. what we're able to provide is a way to make this process much faster, so you don't have to take days to abstract a lease. You're talking about a much shorter time frame. Second, you have complete search capabilities through the PDF, so you can always go back and find information. It's always auditable, and what I mean by that is you can click on a data point and you can basically be returned back to that text and the section within the PDF from where the information came out from. The third is that you're actually structuring data, and I think this is probably the most important thing. As organizations look to become more and more competitive, data is really becoming the king of the land here. And I think what we're looking at is the ability to get information out of these documents and then do sort of analysis on this data across many, many documents. The OCR technology works pretty good. There's a question here on whether it works on handwritten text. I would say that it works about 50% of the time on handwritten text, and we're trying to improve that. If the text is in print, then we can get pretty good at it. If it's script, like a cursive signature, a little bit more challenging. But we're improving the OCR every day. The OCR is also based on machine and deep learning technologies, and I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. Finally, one of the more interesting things about our application is that we're not just a repository of data, we are actually a connecting platform. So we're a really middleware application that sits between your document management system, so where you're storing all of your files and all of your PDF documentation, and then your end state system or your vendor of record. So whether that's an ERP system like SAP or Oracle, or Salesforce, or whether it's a lease administration system like Yardi, MRI, Tririga, etc. We're basically allowing you to capture the data in a structured format, but then also to sync it and send it over into the format in which your end state system can consume it. So really a conduit system that sits between where your physical files are and then where you actually utilize your data. In addition, you could also be using visualization tools to make that happen, such as Tableau or Microsoft Power BI or any other analytics platform, so that you can start to create interesting dashboards out of the platform. And with that, I'll actually switch over to a live demo so you guys can take a look at how the application works. There was a question real quick, do we private label our system? We do. There are a few folks out there who are actually using our application today, but you wouldn't know it because the application is completely private labeled as well. Just go here. All right. Now you should see our SaaS-based platform. It's completely cloud-based, so there is no on-premise version available at the moment. And so here you can see the platform. It's pretty straightforward. We've got a little Rubik's Cube up at the top right corner. That's sort of your navigation panel. And we've got a couple different screens that we're going to navigate through today. Here we're on the import page, which is the first step. And this is sort of the importation wizard. So here we could directly connect this via APIs to the DMS system and set an auto transport of the information into the platform. Or today I'm just going to manually go ahead and pick a piece of a lease file. So if I go in and I kind of pick a test lease, I can choose the language and the operating system and bring it into the platform. And as soon as the lease files are brought into the platform, they begin an optical character recognition process. For those of you who don't know, OCR is simply turning a PDF image or a scanned image into machine-readable text. So for example, sometimes you open up an Adobe PDF file and you can't really find the information in it because it's not been properly turned into an OCR readable text. So the OCR is pretty fast. So we can see here a document that I just uploaded that's pretty heavily scanned. And we can see here that all the information in it is now searchable, machine readable, etc. All right, and I'll show you a couple of more poorly scanned PDFs in a moment as well. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to add a test lease file here. And we're going to bring in these two pieces of documentation. The folder structure is what we call a document set. This allows you to put everything that's related to that particular lease event within the document. So for example, you could have a lease, a couple of amendments, a commencement date certificate, an estoppel certificate, etc. You put it all within one folder, so all of that information is contained in one hierarchical structure. After we do that, we can pick the type of contract that we want to analyze, and we do a lot of different types of documents besides real estate contracts, so things like NDAs, loans, credit agreements, etc. But in this particular case, we'll show a real estate contract. And we'll simply hit the Start Extraction button. Now there's two things that the machine's going to do. One, it's going to read through the documentation, and based on the design, structure, and content, it's going to auto-classify the documents. So it'll know that a lease is a lease, an amendment's an amendment, etc. Once it does that, it's going to go through and start applying the artificial intelligence to actually read through and naturally language process all of the text within the lease. So you can see within a few seconds it's been completed. And what we can see here is that the machine has actually auto-classified the documents. So here you can see that this is the main lease. And here you can see that it's chosen rent review memorandum for this document, which is basically a memorandum of rent review. Once that's completed, we can move on. And basically, we're going to move on from the import screen to the review screen. And the review screen is where you can actually review the data that the machine has abstracted. So basically now, on the right side, you see the PDF. And on the left side, you see all of the information that we pulled out of the PDF out of the lease, and this is based on a sample data structure that we set up in advance of the presentation. But you can customize the data model to add and remove attributes as you'd like. So let's take a look at how it did. So if we click on something like landlord name, you can see that there's an audit trail or a link that goes directly over to the text that is in question, and it's highlighted in dark blue, and so it's extracted this information. And it's always linked to this. You can also see associated information by hovering over. In light blue, that would be related to the particular piece of information that you've pulled out. So if we think this information is correct, we simply validate it and confirm it. By confirming this information, we're actually teaching the machine that this is the correct information. If for any reason we thought that, let's say, the zip code was incorrect and it was actually supposed to pick this zip code, we could just highlight the correct zip code, and then we could simply click into the zip code box, and the new information would appear, and a new linking mechanism would be designed to that new zip code. And here we would just hit the confirm button, and now the machine would add to its inventory of knowledge that the actual correct zip code was here. Since we actually all know this is incorrect, we're going to go ahead and pick the right information again and just put the correct zip code back into the system. And here again, we can just confirm all the information. You could also check mark off the entire section, for example. You can also do other interesting things during the review process. For example, we have functionality like a clipboard, where we can highlight a bunch of text and bring it into the clipboard just so that you can take some notes and come back to it at any point that you want. Or you can even copy this text and paste it into a comments field later on. For every single attribute, you can always add a comments field. So let's say for this EIN number, we can say that something like an internal comment, we can say lease is silent, and we can add this comment here. And now you have a comment that's available. That's internally for your internal purposes, or we can add an external comment saying lease is silent, and that would be available to any users who are actually looking at this. Okay? So things like places, dates, information, those are pretty straightforward. We can obviously go and find rent information. We can also have dates that are calculatable, and different types of rules and things that we can kind of pull out. Now what I'm going to do is show you a couple more complex examples. So if we go over and we see a whole portfolio of assets, we can first take a look at some leases that have some really bad scans in them. And you can see the power of the OCR here. So here you can see a lease that is in pretty bad shape, I would say, from a scanning standpoint. But you can see that, again, all the information is highlightable and scannable. We can also take a look at one that has sort of a coffee stain type of thing going on it. And it's got crooked text. And again, you can see that the information is OCR'd and pullable. So all the information can come out of this context. So let's take a look at a pretty complex US lease. So there's a couple things here to take a look at. One is here on the right side, you can see all the documents that have been uploaded for this particular lease event. Here we can see that we've got the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, but we seem to be missing the Third Amendment. And the machine will actually recognize that and let you know that certain pieces of documentation are missing, something is out of sequence, or something's out of order. If we click on information like landlord, that's pretty easy. Again, similar to the last example I showed you, all the information is searchable and navigatable. And then we can look for information too. So let's say we want to look for the rent information. We can type it in, and we can click on it, and it'll go right to the table and the section from where the information was pulled. So you can actually see that this is able to read right out of a rent table or rent structure and pull the information directly out. It also goes ahead and pulls the next effective rent date, which is the next period in which the rent is chargeable and available. So that's kind of how we structure the information into a lot of data structures. Next, we could look for some more information. So let's take a renewal option, for example. So here we've got the binary condition, whether there is a renewal option or not. And you'll actually see this is where the natural language processing works quite well. So here in the statement, you can see, if I zoom in a little bit, it says, tenant shall retain the option to extend rights contained in section 1G of the Second Amendment. So here you are actually in the Fourth Amendment. If you see where my mouse cursor is, you can see that we're in the Fourth Amendment, where the statement for the renewal option actually refers back to the Second Amendment. And so if we go back to the Second Amendment and we read section 1G, it details out that a renewal option still exists. So it's able to chronologically use logic to process the natural language to realize that the renewal option is still in existence. We can also go to other sections where it'll jump around. So here you can see that the tenant is the beneficiary. We can also see here that we've jumped back to the Second Amendment where it talks about the extension term of 5 years. And since this is the only place where extension term has been defined, and it wasn't redefined in the Fourth Amendment, and it hasn't been canceled or nullified, this extension term is still pretty valid. And finally, you've got things like date calculations where you've got at the end of the initial term, and the initial term is already defined earlier on as a data field. So it's able to tell you that, look, you can renew on July 31st, 2017. And then you can have things like notice periods and other types of clauses. So what's sort of the interesting thing about structuring data like this is that, while we're not an analytics company, you can kind of see how across a portfolio of 140 leases that are from all over the world, we could do on-the-fly analytics. For example, we could say, hey, show me all of my leases that are expiring, let's say, from today until next year. And show me the ones that do not have renewal options. So really quickly, out of 140 leases, I can see what the exposure is going to be over the next 12 months in my portfolio because these leases don't have explicit renewal options, and I should probably be going back to my brokers and taking a look. I could go to like a map, and I could quickly see where are those leases located. So it looks like I got one in California, one in Vietnam, one in the UK. And then I could go to a calendar and kind of see those upcoming dates. And of course, with the clickability, you can just go ahead and click on any of them, and it'll take you right to the lease, right to the section from where the information was basically pulled. And you can see that the information is available in the lease from wherever you need to pull it from. So that's sort of the interesting components of having this structured data and being able to do some of these filters. I'm just going to take a second here because I just saw a bunch of questions roll through. Can you extract a list of supposedly missing documents? Yes, you can export information around project management type of information. So like what kind of documents are in the system, what documents are missing, all of that information is available to export out. What is the accuracy rate or percentage of data that's abstracted from leases using Leverton? So that's a great question, and it actually depends on the language. So the one thing is that we operate in about over 30 languages, everything from your Romance languages like German, Spanish, French, Italian, to some of your more Germanic languages such as German, as well as Eastern European languages such as Romanian, Russian, as well as some Asian languages like Simple Chinese, Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean. Each of these languages, we have a little bit of different experience in each of them. So basically, we are most proficient in English and probably German, since the company was German-based originally. It also depends on the complexity of the actual attribute. So for example, something like landlord or tenant information, we get right like 95% of the time, because that's something that's so easily found in almost all leases. And then something more complex like a co-tenancy clause, we're a little bit less accurate at. We may be only able to find it 10% of the time, and even when we find it, we're not able to accurately abstract it. So it's important to understand that this is completely an acceleration tool. It is not a replacement tool. You still do need a human to review this information and correct it. But as time goes on, our accuracy levels are improving and we're getting better and better. How does this compare to Adobe's OCR built-in Acrobat Pro? This is, we've run some tests and we think that this is substantially better. You can actually download the PDFs from our system with our OCR built into it. So you can actually download all of the PDFs and it'll basically, you'll be able to compare side by side how Adobe's OCR does versus what we do. Let me just check out a few more questions. Do you have a reseller and an OEM program? Yes, absolutely we do. Definitely just reach out to me after this and we can talk a little bit more about that. And can a P&L statement be OCR analyzed? Yes, it can be OCR analyzed. We haven't done a tremendous amount of that, but we've been doing some beta testing on P&Ls. Again, every new document that we get, we have to train the machine on how to read it. It's the same way that if you just hired a college graduate and you said, here's a bunch of profit and loss statements, please, find out a bunch of information from here. Basically, we have to teach the machine the same thing. I want to show you one last thing, which is our reporting application. So this is the custom reporting application that we've built on top of our application, on top of our core functionality. And basically, this is to kind of showcase what you can do with the application. So what we have done here is we've created some custom lease abstracts. And basically, I can go ahead and download a Word version or a PDF version. And I can also download it with the hyperlinks built in. So I'm just going to go ahead and download this and save it. And if I open this PDF, which you should be able to see, this is kind of a summary report of all the information that's in the lease abstract. So you've got things like your rent table, your rent schedule, you've got your operating and CAM expenses, any insurance responsibility, security deposit, late fees, rights and options, things like that. That again, we just used our own API to build this out, but we could totally customize this or help you to customize it yourself. So basically, if I also can see here that all the information is hyperlinked again, so you can again click on any of the information in that PDF and it'll just take you back to our platform and to that particular test file, and you can go ahead and see the information that's come out of the platform right into the application, and basically it'll jump you right into that application platform. Privacy and data security measures. We are a cloud-based system hosted on Amazon Web Services, which is obviously SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, and ISO 27001 compliant. We also have a data center in Europe for anybody that has to comply with GDPR. So we have all that European compliance as well. We can definitely provide more information in terms of information security and the things that we do with our application to make sure that all the data is very securely kept. We also use ASC 5112-bit for encryption. So all the latest standards and sort of security and measurements. Let's see, pricing, yeah, so okay, let's jump into that. So I'm just going to open that up in a second. All right, so now we're looking at our pricing slide here, and basically on pricing, we are pretty straightforward pricing for real estate leases. Basically, you pay $120 flat fee for the lease. It comes fully abstracted with our quality review service as well, and you get the information in a way that you can kind of consume it. And then we have a maintenance fee going forward for that same lease. So let's say you have amendments, modifications, changes to the leases. We can go ahead and make sure that your data is always up to date and completely structured the entire time. And that's $30 a year after that. We usually think of a lease file as up to 5 documents, so 1 main lease, 3 amendments, and maybe an estoppel certificate or a commencement date certificate, and a bunch of exhibits. That would be just about 5 documents. That's pretty much it in terms of our volume-based pricing. Then we also have a user-based pricing, which is $50 a month per user. So that's in addition to the volume-based pricing based on the number of leases. Usually setup costs are pretty low if you can use our out-of-the-box data models, but if you need any customization done to the data models, there is just an hourly charge for that. Any questions on the pricing? All right, great. You can let me know if there's any other questions on that, but should be pretty straightforward. I did also want to show, for those of you who are interested in IFRS 16 and ASC 842, we are supporting a lot of companies with their IFRS 16 and ASC 842 challenges. So I'm just going to show that real quick. For those of you who don't know, IFRS 16 and ASC 842 is probably the first time that the IASB and the FASB have actually seen eye to eye on something, which is that companies need to basically bring their lease liabilities onto their balance sheet, whether it's for real estate, whether it's machinery, equipment, vehicles, telecoms, etc. And basically, there's a bunch of valuation work that needs to be done. So we're working with a lot of global corporations who are looking to take more than just real estate leases, but also look at any of their other types of leases and make sure that they can be brought onto the balance sheet. So sort of in the prop tech space, but expanding a little bit outside of it as well. And then making sure that you can API that information directly into the ERP systems of choice. So whether that's things like Manhattan, CoStar, MRI, Argus, Yardi, Nakisa, ProLease, etc., sending that information over to there as well. We've got a little bit different pricing model for those types of documents because they are so numerous and they tend to be a little bit smaller than real estate leases. And that's pretty much sort of the end of our presentation. We are working with a lot of clients in this space, whether you're a real estate owner, a family office, or a large institution, or you're on the other side where you're a tenant and you're just looking to get better access to the data and make sure that you're making your lease payments on time and that you're not having any type of exposure, or if you're looking to comply with these new regulations, or if you're a service provider or a consultant. So we work with the likes of JLL, CBRE, Colliers, and other folks out there in the space that are utilizing this technology to get through this sort of annoying process of abstracting leases and improving outcomes as well. And with that, I'm going to wrap up my core presentation. We've got a couple quick minutes left, so I just want to see if there's any outstanding questions. Let's see. I have one question. Pricing for DD same as for PM. Yeah, I think we have just the same pricing. It's always uniform pricing. Yeah. Great. Well, if there are any further questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me or my colleagues. You can email us at us-sales@leverton, leverton.ai. And my contact information is readily available as well.
Hey Abe, this is Kateri with CRE Tech. I just had one quick question for you. Do you guys have any plans to integrate with other tech companies to partner with them for your product in the future?
Yeah, so we're already working on that actually. So for example, we are part of the MRI Partner Connect program, and we've actually developed an interface where you can actually directly export the data from our system directly into MRI. And we'll be showcasing that at the MRI Users Conference next week in Orlando. We're also doing some similar experiments with Yardi. We are also in talks with Argus. And as well as a lot of the technology companies that you see here on the bottom. We've also been talking to joint clients who use VTS, for example. For those of you who are on VTS and are going through that leasing process, it might be nice and interesting for you to be able to see some of the key terms and conditions in the actual lease pop up in your VTS platform. So we're working on some unique things like that to integrate with other partners in the ecosystem. Great. Kateri, I think that's it for me. If there are any other questions, otherwise we can wrap up.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Abe.
Thank you for having me.
So that was awesome. So as a reminder, I think that a few people have joined since the previous presentation. Please feel free to interact with the demonstrators. There's a couple of different ways you can do your